Do you wonder if you're the best version of yourself? This is the question we seek to answer in this podcast. We reveal information that helps you recover your health and become resilient. Modern life makes us fragile. Our diet, lifestyle, and environment set us up for failure. We do not accept this. We seek optimization. We strive to become dynamic. Hey, what's going on? Dr. Chris here. Today I want to talk about blood panels and blood sugar issues and why so many people are underdiagnosed with blood sugar problems. Prediabetes, diabetes is what I'm talking about. But let me put this into context first. So often I'll have someone in my office and they have all the signs and symptoms of blood sugar problems, which I'll go over in a second. And then I'll ask about their blood work. And I'll say, your blood sugars, how are those? Oh, no, they're perfect. Everything's perfect there. And I just know that that's not the case. So if you have central obesity and your blood pressure is elevated, you probably are at least in a pre-diabetic state. If you've got skin tags or dark patches of skin in your neck, armpit area, groin area, that's another sign. If you've got joint pain and inflammation, or you've developed an autoimmune disease, or your thyroid is low, these could all be sort of indicators or suggestive of a blood sugar issue. So many issues start with a blood sugar issue because blood sugar control or homeostasis is one of the four main homeostatic regulators of the body. So when that goes off, a lot of things go bad. So the hormone that regulates the amount of sugar in the blood is insulin. And most of our cells of our body have insulin receptors. So when you become insulin resistant, whatever tissues are now insulin resistant are the ones that get most affected by it. Let's take arteries and veins, for example. Insulin under normal circumstances in a healthy individual is a vasodilator, so it dilates the arteries. When they become insulin resistant, the opposite happens. They start to get vasoconstriction. So that's the association between high blood pressure and blood sugar issues. So why is it getting so underdiagnosed? I think we have a problem. We're just looking at the wrong things. We have sort of a glucose dominant paradigm at the moment, and we should be checking insulin and some other markers as well, which I'm going to go over. Your typical blood panel, I read people's blood panels all the time, generally measure glucose and A1C, and that's about it. Uric acid maybe is kind of a secondary marker. So let me talk about those markers first. So glucose is a very finicky marker. Just like blood pressure is very finicky. You kind of just get in a snapshot. Right? So, and the other thing too is people will do their blood work in a fasted state. So if you fasted all night and you fast in the morning and go get your blood work done, that is when your glucose is at its lowest. So it's really easy to get a false negative. And to be fair, there's definitely a lot of false positives as well with glucose. So glucose can be like a roller coaster throughout the day. If you've worn a glucose monitor ever, you can see this trend. Everyone should do that at some point, by the way. I do it on a yearly basis just to check in. But you could, so glucose is highly tied to the stress response. So when you're in a sympathetic state, your body secretes cortisol. Cortisol then triggers a release of sugar into the blood for quick energy for the fight or flight response. So even just driving to, the clinic to get your blood drawn, if you run into traffic or, maybe you just don't like to drive that much and it makes you angry, that's enough to spike your glucose as well. So I personally put very little stock in glucose on a blood panel. I do care if it's elevated, but I will look at a lot of the other markers to support, or to determine if there's a pattern there. So let's get into A1C. A1C is a much better marker, but it's got problems too. So they say it's the average over 3 months. So what is the HbA1c? So sugar, as you probably know, is sticky, and A1C measures how many molecules of blood have a sugar molecule attached. So if your A1C is 6, which would be high, by the way, that means 6% of your red blood cells have a sugar molecule attached. Now, the average red blood cell lives for 120 days. So that's why I say it's A1C is an average of the 3 to 4 month lifespan of the blood cell. However, there is variance in how long a red blood cell lives. So in very healthy individuals, the red blood cell can live up to 130 days. In someone who's a little bit less healthy, it could be 88 days. So if you're a little bit unhealthy and your red blood cells are dying a little younger, that means they're around for less time and gives the sugar less opportunity to attach to it. So it'll falsely show that you have normal A1C levels. It's just kind of like underreported. Conversely, if you are very healthy and your red blood cells are living in 130 days, now sugar's had more time and more opportunity to attach, so it might be falsely high. So that's one thing you have to consider with A1C. Now, there is another marker called MCV, mean corpuscular volume. It's the average size of the diameter of your blood cells. Blood cells start off large when they're young, and as they get older, they shrink. So MCV can be a way to help tease out this A1C problem. So it's an inverse marker. So if MCV is high, that means the average diameter is larger, which means that your blood cells are dying younger. Take that into consideration. So high MCV and normal A1C could be basically a scenario where A1C is underrepresented. Now, if your MCV is low, it's a sign that you're healthier because they're dying later in life. The blood cells are dying later in life. So if your A1C is high and your MCV is low, chances are that your blood sugar might be in a better place. So those are the main problems with the blood sugar markers. What should we be doing? In my opinion, it's insulin. We should be looking at insulin first. That is the first thing to go up before diabetes happens. So let me go into that. So as I mentioned, when you eat a carb-heavy meal, the pancreas secretes insulin to manage the blood sugar. Over time, over years of maybe a higher carb diet, if you stop responding to insulin as much, the pancreas will secrete more insulin because it's really dangerous to have high blood sugar. So it'll secrete enough insulin until the cells finally respond. So elevated insulin is sort of the first shoe to fall. So you could have elevated insulin and normal blood sugars because it's just taking more insulin to get the blood sugar to respond. So that's the problem. If you have normal A1C, normal glucose, and insulin's not being tested, we're missing the boat. And this is where we have an opportunity to change diet and lifestyle. Because eventually insulin will just stop working, and then the blood sugars rise next. And then you're in a much more difficult position. So as of now, insulin's not routinely checked. So make sure to ask for that on your next set of blood work. What can you do, though, if you don't have insulin? There is a little bit of a trick here. You can look at your triglycerides to HDL ratio. That tends to be a really good marker for your metabolic health, because that's what we're talking about here is your metabolic health. So take your triglycerides, divide it by HDL. If that's 1.5 or lower, you're doing good. So like the closer that number gets to 1, that ratio, the better you are and the healthier you are, at least from a cardiometabolic perspective. Once you get to 2, 3, 4, then that's pretty high, and you got to do some follow-up work after that. The other thing you can do is get a glucose monitor, as I mentioned earlier. I mean, I think it's very important. It's great data, and you're going to learn a lot of things about yourself and how you respond, because everyone's different, right? Certain foods will spike certain people and not affect other people, or certain things. I've talked about this a lot on the podcast, such as like different brands or different types of rice, for example, might spike you and other ones won't. So you can make better buying decisions. Then you'll also figure out things like how much stress really affects your blood sugar. Some of the lifestyle parts of this is huge. Lack of sleep, I covered this in a few podcasts ago, lack of sleep will elevate your blood sugar. Another thing to think about, too, in that fasted glucose test, if you're poorly slept, you're going to be falsely elevated. Luckily, these days, you can now just go online and buy a glucose monitor without a prescription. So that's all for this podcast. Just make sure to ask for insulin on your next set of blood work and consider a glucose monitor. A ship in harbor is safe, but that's not what ships are meant to do. What does this mean? It means exposing yourself to difficult situations so you become resilient. If you need help building resilience, check out our flagship program called Physiologic Flexibility. This is a 3-month do-it-yourself program that teaches you how to maximize your homeostatic regulators, such as your pH, blood glucose, O2 and CO2 tolerance, and temperature. We give you specific action items through the program with a goal of becoming anti-fragile. If you want to become the inspiration for your friends and family, this is the program for you.